I enjoyed Sarah Gibson. It was Gibson's
Sarah
choice.
Gobson.
It was Gobbo's choice. It was
the Cold War
Kids. Yeah, I like that. But do you know what? I think Oh Mandy by the Spinto Band may have swung it for me.
No.
There's a round of applause, Steve Wright stuff. Do you know what? Listen, I would love to be able to speak to you more because, as I say, I've not had a bona fide 100% Scotch on the show before, and I'd love to probe you more about Scotland and all that stuff. But I'm going to have to leave it for now. But hopefully you'll get back in touch in the future. Maybe make other suggestions.
I will. Thanks, Steve.
Carl, I really appreciate it. Thank you, mate.
Cheers, mate. Bye.
Excellent. Oh, excellent. Good. Okay, so listen, your regular listeners will know that the whole show is about me getting suggestions from you, the listeners, from my good friends Harry and Dan, but also from occasional guests. Yes, it's right, I occasionally have guests. I've never yet had a guest, but this is the first occasional guest. And, you know, I would like to think of him as a friend. At best, he's an acquaintance. Please welcome I'm going to give you a little bit of a build-up now. The co-author of Jerry Springer the Opera, which is about Jerry Springer in the form of an opera. He's also one of the best stand-up comedians of his generation. That's my opinion, and it counts for something. And he's also an occasional music critic for the Sunday Times. Please welcome Stuart Lee. He's here. Yeah, you should. In the Steve Wright. We started off ironically clapping a couple of weeks back, and now it is just clapping in the style of Steve Wright. There's nothing wrong with that. No. It gives a certain energy to this otherwise slightly lackluster show. So Stuart, thank you so much for getting in. I just want to ask you quickly before we play any of the music you've brought in. I know you've brought in a couple of choices, and I know you've given some hard thought to these.
No, I did because when I started to try and choose them, I realised that I was very self-consciously trying to give a number of things. One, an account of myself as a person of taste.
Sure.
And secondly, I also started to become crushed under a weight of responsibility that I should try and introduce important things, and the whole thing started to drive me mad. So in the end, I just got the last three things that I'd listened to.
Excellent.
Because that is honest.
But it's weird because that's exactly how I feel before every one of these shows, and I always feel afterwards that I've made terrible selections.
Yeah, and don't you feel like a kind of weight of responsibility that there are these amazing things that you should tell the public about, and that you've ruined someone's life.
But you also get angry because they're not texting in saying thank you so much for introducing this to me. It's the same as if stop the car, pull over. We got to chat about that song. It was amazing. It made me see you in a whole different light, Steve.
Yeah, but also I realised I was trying to make myself look like a particular kind of person by what I had chosen. And you know, when you used to make compilation tapes or CDs for people, and you just like, hey, check this out. It sounds like that guy's mate in Scotland's like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Thinks he wants Cole to go, you are amazing. Where do you get your amazing taste from?
Some kind of West Country guy there has moved up to the wilds of Scotland.
Yeah.
So, very quickly, how would you characterise your music taste? I mean, are you an eclectic person? Are you middle of the road?
I listen to bits of everything apart from kind of 80s metal. I don't like much classical music, and I part company with hip hop when it went into bling rather than anti-white race hatred. I like that phase of it.
Right. Sorry, I phased outside. All I heard was race hatred. You liked hip hop when it was about race hatred.
When it was like furious people like Public Enemy trying to, kill me.
Sure,
I thought that was good then.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, so what have you chosen for us? What's the first track you've chosen for us?
The first track is what I've probably, in the rotating three of my top favourite bands of all time. It's from the new album by The Fall.
Okay, I'm already a little anxious because I've never been won over by The Fall. I find it difficult. Maybe we'll listen to this.
I completely understand.
Yeah. Well, why'd you play it? Why'd you play it?
Because it was one of my genuine last three things I had on my CD player.
Thanks very much for coming.
Cheers.
Here's the issue I have with The Fall. I completely respect Marky Smith. I understand he's a fascinating and interesting and poetic man. But firstly, that track sounds to me, although I enjoyed it, it sounds very similar to almost every other Fall track I've heard. I know that's going to upset every Fall fan out there. I know it's going to make me sound like a Philistine. But I feel like I always had that suspicion that it feels like some elaborate joke on the listener, or not a joke so much, because I know that he's got kind of great heart and passion.
I think it is an elaborate joke in some ways as well, and I find it really funny to go and watch them, and to continually go back for the 33rd time it will be in April that I go and see them, because sometimes you feel like he's laughing up his sleeve at you, and that these things are kind of being inflicted on you as a test of endurance, right? But I find that hilarious. Right?
But that's the thing, is it does feel like something of a task and a challenge every time you listen to a Fall track. It's like, I've got to get, I want to appreciate this, I've got to get to the end of 4 minutes of him sort of talking. It's basically gobbledygook, as far as I can tell.
Well, yeah, often it seems like gobbledygook, and then suddenly things just kind of crystallise. I mean, I find that one weirdly moving. It seems to be about memory and something to do with Remembrance Day. I don't know exactly. There's kind of strange direction for him, because that band. I mean, you say they all sound the same, right? All four songs, but if within the nuance of The Fall, that one is incredibly indicative of this new lineup. He split the British lineup up on a Tuesday in somewhere like Tucson, Arizona, in the last tour at the end of last year, and by the Thursday he was in San Diego with a new American lineup.
Wow,
and
that's
so
impressive.
it's pretty good. And he puts together these. I think he puts together these kind of riffs now that he can just improvise over, and that's got this real looseness that this kind of American band have brought to it. They're like kind of jamming band, whereas the last British lineup were kind of really on beat. So I mean, it's quite interesting.
So the live experiences, I mean, does the live experience, will it change my view of The Fall?
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely compelling. I mean, he's like an amazing orator to watch, and I always find myself trying to hide. I'm really terrified he's going to make eye contact with me, and I find it really intimidating, and I feel completely on edge for the whole experience, and I usually end up paralytically drunk because I'm so nervous every time I see them that it could be one of the greatest gigs I've ever seen, or because it's built on such an odd foundation, it could just be terrible.
Yeah.
But I think how exciting that is rather than, all these indie rock bands that are basically playing to click tracks and being produced by pop groups.
But
just the feeling of danger.
But it's interesting because I know that, having spoken to you in the past, that there's a certain pleasure you take in whether it be performance of any description, really, where it kind of slightly challenges the audience, where you're not entirely sure what the motives of the person performing are.
Yeah.
And was that fair to say? Is that something that you would
definitely. And I think probably something about the way I do stand-ups come off watching The Fall a lot, where you think, where the hell is this going? And it may actually just not work. And I find it really exciting that someone of any degree of profile would go out and take those kind of risks, because you just don't see people doing it. Obviously some of those risks are as a result of under-rehearsed incompetence as well.
Sure.
But you can just I mean, look, on the last tour, he sent the keyboard player, his wife Eleni, out to kind of read something which seemed to be an attack on Steve Wright, or Matthew Wright, over a kind of improvised backing, saying that in her Polish accent, describing someone as being the sort of person who would keep a false pair of women's breasts under their desk at work over and over again. And it's just
that sums
really
up both of those men.
I know, it was just really funny. But I mean, yeah, it is comical as well.
Yeah. Dan, I know you're a massive Fall fan. I've often argued about this with you.
Yeah.
Do you share the feelings about the live performance of Marky Smith?
Yeah, well, I've almost feel shamed because I've only been to see them once live, and it was quite shambolic. But
which
again,
one was it?
This was back in about 1992. It would have been, I think.
Was that shambolic, Stuart?
That was quite a tight era.
Yeah, well, I think it was compared to, but there were tapes that were playing over the live music, and there were bits where he was talking, and bits of it were pre-recorded, him with his vocals, and he was kind of arguing with himself. And I love all that.
Hey, we could do that on this. This show's on tape. We could do that.
Yeah.
I could say, I love The Fall. No, you don't, Steve. We'll just cut that together. It'll be a fascinating discussion. Harry, what are your views on The Fall? Are you like me? Do you side with me?
Yeah, I'm not a massive Fall fan. I hear stuff like that and I love it, but I look at the back catalogue and I'm just hugely intimidated.
Yeah.
I don't know where to start.
It is. It's one of those people like Miles Davis, John Coltrane, or Captain Beefheart or something. You just think, where do I begin? And I mean, there's a couple of handy compilations out that are good for starters. But yeah, I kind of think it's impossible to get aboard now, almost.
Okay, well, we've discussed Marky Smith, perhaps more than we should have on a show like this, which is really just trying to be the Steve Wright show. I'm going to pop on this pair of comedy breasts, and I'm going to listen to your next choice, Stuart, which is what?
It's Chris Draver, who's a new folk singer from the Orkneys, and this is a version of the standard Patrick Spence.
Chris Draver, or possibly Draver, and Patrick Spence. I believe, interestingly enough, that Big Chuff Masters played on that track, although I can't be certain.
He may have done.
But am I right in saying there's something of a folk renaissance at the moment, or is that just something that people have written about in magazines? It's not actually happening.
Well, that's probably why I chose that, because there's a lot of people talking about new folk, and it tends to mean one of two things, which is people doing traditional music really badly, Jim Morey does, or singing it like you're an actor, like Seth Lakeman does, or plugging it into a kind of laptop and sampling it back on itself, right, so that it sounds like it's exactly from 2007 and no other time.
Yes.
And what I think's really good about that album, which is out this week, is that in the midst of all this, he's managed to make a quite trad folk album, but just give it enough of a kind of edge to sound like it's kind of woken up a bit, but doesn't seem kind of gimmicky or desperate, And I think there's loads of mileage left in traditional music without having to kind of do it in a stupid midway.
What did you make of the Bruce Springsteen doing Pete Seeger songs and his reinvention of them?
Well, I didn't hear that. I
Get out.
No, I didn't. I don't, just can't. I don't. You love Bruce Springsteen.
I love the
don't
boss, and I have to say that him live doing that stuff was dynamite.
I just don't get Springsteen at all. And I think it's like that rather unfair thing where, as a teenager, I mistook him for some kind of flag beating patriot.
Oh,
Not even a flag wearer.
the worst kind of patriot. A flag beater.
Flags.
Yeah.
And actually, I went to a gig the other week at Lucinda Williams where he came on as a special guest. And
What? I can't believe I missed it.
At the Church of Chris Empire.
Oh, I'm devastated.
And everyone went nuts, and I thought, it's just like a bloke spoiling a blues song, and I couldn't like find it in my heart to be excited by it, and I felt but Will Adamsdale's just given me Nebraska and says that will convince me.
Well, I think that I began by saying that I would hope we could one day be friends. I think now it's going to remain acquaintances at best.
But I had this with Dylan as well. Simon Munnery, the comedian Simon Munnery, forced me to like Bob Dylan about 12 years ago by keeping me awake with various aids.
For various what? Aids?
Yeah, not with aids, but with various
various musical aids.
Yeah, he kept me awake for about 12 hours playing me more or less the same Bob Dylan song over and over again, which was She's Your Woman Now, until I had to admit it was great, just so I'd be allowed to go to sleep.
So he's still not won you over?
No, I did. I love Dylan now, but it's as a result of that one very long night. So I think you need to invite me round and force Springsteen on me, and literally Springsteen himself.
Yeah, well, that would be the dream. Nebraska, of course, is the album which he recorded sort of on a 4-track demo and stuff, and he kind of put it out, and it's actually not a personal favourite of mine, but I'm sure if you like that kind of folk, and if you're willing to accept that that it's Bruce and just ignore the flag beating myth that you have of him.
But he never beat any flags,
I
did he?
don't believe he's ever touched a flag.
Imagine.
Well, I said on the show a couple of weeks back when I was trying to convince the Six Music listeners of Bruce Springsteen's brilliance. Yeah, people associate him as being a stadium rocker in the same vein as Cher or Meatloaf, and he's not. He's a man of great integrity. He's never done as far as I'm aware, he's never done a corporate gig, for instance, which I know, you would imagine to be a marker of integrity, right there.
Only because I can't do that.
Exactly.
I'd be rubbish at them.
So yeah, but maybe give Bruce a go, and then I will give The Fall a go. And
I like it when he gets that woman out and spins her around out of the audience, Bruce Springsteen. Remember that?
I think you've confused him with Darren Brown. Okay, so your final choice is I can't tell from looking at it whether they're called Weak Futures and the song's called Camberwell Now or the other way around.
It's the Camberwell Now who came out of a mid-70s art group called This Heat. And this has been reissued, which I'm delighted about because I love this track. It's come out this month on CD, and this is called Weak Futures.
Camberwell Now and Weak Futures. Well, there we are. I mean, it's not for me to be the judge. It's very much for you, the listeners, and for Stuart to be the judge. Talk to me a little about Camberwell Now, but not for very long.
Okay. Well, what I like about that is it's kind of before synths and stuff, and they'd have to like make those sounds out of little tape loops on playing them through cassette recorders and stuff, and you can feel like a succession of kind of choices being made. I love that droning sound in it. I think that's really brilliant. I like the way that it's delayed until the rhythm kicks in. And I love that whole thing of like the point at which something becomes unbearable to the point where there's a feeling of relief as it shifts, and also like all the words that seem to be like descriptions of sort of Thatcherite policy and protect and survive leaflets and stuff. It really reminds me of being 14 and frightened of everything that was going on.
So when are they originally from?
Well, they started out in the mid-70s as This Heat, which were like a punk band, but were really English kind of progressive rock middle class art school types who went a bit noisy to get around it. I think this is from about 82, I think. Well, I like that whole stream that kind of gets neglected in English rock music of clever posh people doing weird things, which I think sort of massively overlooked. That's kind of what Damon Albarn is really.
Right, sure. Are you one of those?
Am I a clever
You're not posh
person?
Are you posh?
Well, I am now. I think I'm securely middle class now.
Have you become posh?
Yeah, I went, and I'm. My wife argues with me about it. She insists that I'm not, but I didn't struggle to get into Oxford University to then be told that I'm not middle class. I definitely am now. I feel entitled to say that. Yeah.
Well, I wanted to talk very briefly about. Thank you for the music choices. I want very briefly about your show that I saw very recently, which I don't think is currently running, but I'm sure people will be able to find it again in the future. Called well, you explain it to me.
What Would Judas Do?
What Would Judas Do? Now, it's difficult to explain because on paper it sounds like a curious thing, a stand-up comedian taking the part of Judas, and if you like, offering an alternative version of the Judas Jesus dichotomy. That's pretty much the show, right?
Yeah, it's me as Judas talking about why I betrayed Christ. But I try and get the audience involved and ask for their suggestions and make it like a dialogue. And I restage the Last Supper and give everyone bread and wine, which is nice. I think the night you were in there was a woman in who knew a lot about Judas.
She did. She was taking issue with some of the things you said, and you perhaps showed up your ignorance on
I
occasion.
did. Do you know what she did after the show was over, though?
Kissed you?
No, she stayed in the room, and I draw a picture on the wall with chalk at the end.
Yes.
She wrote religious slogans all over the wall in chalk.
Goodness me.
It was a bit frightening.
That's extreme. Well, the reason I mention it is because I myself am an atheist, as I suspect probably you are. But I there's obviously a lot of interesting music that's been made by religious people,
Yeah.
religious types in the past. And I wondered if you were familiar with this artist Judy Sill, who recently